Previously in part 1, Valeria Knox, the ruthless CEO, uncovered proof of her rival Gavin Mercer's betrayals. She revealed the truth to his fiancée, Lila Hart, shattering her world and sparking a dangerous alliance. Together they began plotting Gavin's public downfall, while an unexpected tension grew between them. Link is in the description for part 1. Whitaker and the projector guy confirms he'll be posing as a waiter. Was all Valeria could manage, a low, non-committal hum that vibrated through her and into Lila. They lapsed back into silence. The touch remained. It became the new normal. Their meetings were now a series of these electric, breathless moments, hiding in plain sight amidst the revenge planning. Another afternoon, Lila was demonstrating the calm, clear tone of voice she would use to dismantle Gavin. I simply say, "There's been a change of plans," and then I nod to the tech guy. She looked at Valeria for approval. Is that too mild? Should there be more ice? Valeria was leaning against her desk, arms crossed, watching her with an intensity that was entirely personal. "No," she said, her voice soft. "The ice is in the words, not the tone. The fact that you're so calm, so utterly in control while you destroy him, that will be what haunts him. It's perfect." Her eyes dropped to Lila's lips as she spoke. Lila felt the look like a physical touch. Her own lips parted slightly, a tiny, involuntary gasp catching in her throat. The study was so quiet she could hear the soft tick of the antique clock on the mantelpiece, the rustle of her own silk blouse. As she breathed, Valeria's gaze darkened, the winter frost in her eyes melting into something hot and possessive. She uncrossed her arms, her hand coming up almost as if to touch Lila's cheek before she aborted the movement, clenching her fist and letting it fall to her side. The restraint was more devastating than any touch could have been. "Valeria, Lila," whispered, the name a question and an answer. "This is a dangerous game we're playing, Lila," Valeria said, her voice a rough scrape against the quiet. She pushed off the desk and walked to the window, putting physical distance between them, as if she couldn't trust herself up close. "The lines are getting blurred." "Are they?" Lila challenged, finding a courage she didn't know she possessed. She stayed where she was, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Or are they just becoming clearer?" Valeria turned to look at her, the city lights framing her powerful silhouette. The plan was revenge, a business merger, a transaction. And now, Valeria's answer was a long time coming. "Now I find myself thinking about the transaction far more than the business." The next day, Valeria was showing Lila how to access the encrypted files on a secure tablet. Her hand covered Lila's, guiding her fingers to the correct sequence of commands. Her skin was warm, her touch sure, like this press and hold. Lila wasn't processing the tech lesson. She was hyper-aware of the feel of Valeria's hand on hers, the subtle scent of her, the way her body heat seemed to radiate and envelop her. Her breath hitched. Valeria felt it. She stilled, her hand tightening almost imperceptibly over Lila's. Her head was bent close to Lila's, her lips just inches from her ear. "You're not paying attention," she murmured, and her voice was a low, intimate thrum that went straight through Lila. "I am Lila, breath lying. It's just distracting." What is Valeria's voice was pure knowing velvet you? The word hung in the air. A confession and a dare. Valeria slowly, deliberately turned Lila's hand over in hers, so they were palm to palm. Her thumb stroked a slow, deliberate path across Lila's knuckles. The touch was incendiary. "Careful, Lila," Valeria whispered, her eyes locked on their joined hands. "Or I might start thinking you like me more than you like revenge." The air crackled. The carefully constructed pretense of their alliance was crumbling around them, leaving only this raw, pulsing truth. Lila's fear vanished, burned away by the heat of the look in Valeria's eyes. She tightened her own grip on Valeria's hand, her reply leaving her lips in a rush of bold, unvarnished honesty. "Maybe I do." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a universe holding its breath. Valeria's eyes widened a fraction, the last of her icy control shattering. Her gaze dropped to Lila's lips, and this time there was no hesitation, only a hungry, blatant want. They were standing on a precipice. The plan, the revenge, the world outside, it all faded into a distant hum. There was only the two of them in the lamplight, hands clasped, the space between their lips diminishing with every frantic beat of their hearts. The line hadn't just been crossed. It had been obliterated. Part 7. The Wedding Day Massacre. The air in the cathedral was thick with the cloying scent of thousands of white gardeners, and the low, reverent hum of the city's most powerful people awaiting a spectacle. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting jewel-toned patterns across the marble floors and the assembled guests. A who's who of business, politics, and old money society. It was a perfect day, a picture-perfect day for a perfect fairy tale wedding. For Lila Hart, it was a waking nightmare. Every breath she took in the confines of her monumental gown felt like a lie. The heavy silk and lace, the intricate bodice beaded with pearls. It was a costume for a role she now despised. Each pearl felt like an eye watching her, judging her complicity in this charade. Her bouquet of gardeners trembled in her hands, not with nervous excitement, but with the sheer white-knuckled force of her restraint. She stood at the end of the endless aisle, her arm linked through her father's. At the far end, beneath a cascading arch of more white flowers, stood Gavin. He looked triumphant, his smile brilliant and smug as he watched her approach. He believed he had one. He believed this was his coronation. Trash doesn't belong in palaces. Valeria's voice whispered in her mind, a stunning mantra. Her eyes, hidden behind her veil, scanned the guests, and there she was. Valeria Knox, not in the front, not with family, but positioned with strategic perfection in the middle of the central aisle. She was a stark, magnificent slash of darkness. In a sea of pastel finery, she wore a severe, impeccably tailored black suit, her dark hair a sleek helmet, her expression one of cool, detached amusement, as if she were watching a particularly predictable play. Her gaze met Lila's through the veil, and for a heartbeat, it was as if the entire cathedral vanished. There was no one else. Just that look. A look of unwavering certainty, of promised fire. It was the anchor Lila needed. The walk down the aisle was a surreal slow-motion parade. Smiling faces blurred past. She heard the whispers. Isn't she radiant? What a beautiful couple. Each one a tiny dagger. She kept her eyes fixed on Gavin, her own face arranged into the beatific love-struck smile she had practiced in the mirror. She saw his chest puff out with pride. The fool. She reached the altar. Her father placed her hand in Gavin's. His grip was possessive, damp. She wanted to recoil, to snatch her hand back and scrub it clean. Instead, she let her fingers lie limply in his, a dead thing. The ceremony began. The priest's voice boomed through the sacred space, full of pomp and hollow sanctity. He spoke of love, fidelity, and sacred bonds. Each word was a grotesque joke. Lila's heart was a frantic drum against her ribs, so loud she was sure the entire congregation could hear it. She chanced another glance at Valeria, a barely perceptible nod. It was time. The priest turned to Gavin. Do you, Gavin? Gavin Mercer, take this woman. Gavin's voice was clear, confident, and utterly fraudulent. I do. The priest turned to her. His kind, elderly face was a mask of genuine joy. And do you, Lila Hart, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part? The entire cathedral held its breath. This was the moment, the pinnacle. Lila let the silence stretch. 1 second, 2. She saw a flicker of confusion cross Gavin's face. The priest smiled gently, thinking it was bridal nerves. She lifted her head. With her free hand, she reached up and slowly, deliberately pushed the veil back from her face. The gesture was not one of nervousness, but of revelation. The smile was gone from her lips, replaced by a chilling preternatural calm. Her voice, when it came, did not tremble. It did not shout. It was clear, cold, and carried to the very back of the cavernous room. with a piercing quality of shattering glass. There's been a change of plans. A ripple of confused murmuring went through the crowd. Gavin's smile froze, then faltered. "Lila, darling," he said, a warning edge in his voice, trying to laugh it off for the audience. "What are you?" "I cannot," she continued, her voice cutting through his, "stand here and make a vow before God and all of you that I know with absolute certainty he has already broken repeatedly and with staggering variety." The gasps were audible now. Gavin's face flushed a mottled red. "What is this? What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?" He tried to grab her arm, but she wrenched it away with a strength that surprised them both. "My mind has never been clearer," she stated, her eyes blazing with a cold fire as she turned to address the congregation. "You see, while my fiancé was planning this beautiful wedding with me, he was also conducting a series of extracurricular activities." She gave a tiny, almost invisible nod toward the rear of the church, the enormous screen behind the altar until, then showing a soft focus photo of the happy couple flickered. For a beat, there was a glitch, a hiss of feedback. Then the damning evidence began to roll, one frame after another in ruthless high definition. The side-by-side shots from the charity gala, the restaurant receipt, Gavin with the lobbyist, Gavin, in turn, slipping out of a condo at dawn. Text after text, each one cruder and more incriminating than the last. The cathedral erupted. Gasps became shouts of fury and disbelief. Camera phones, banned until now, were yanked out, popping like lightning. The gossip site editor was nearly drooling as he hammered at his screen. "Shut it off," Gavin bellowed, his face contorted in pure, undiluted panic and rage. He lunged for the tech booth, but two burly ushers quietly on Valeria's payroll stepped smoothly into his way. "It's done, Gavin," Lila said, her voice somehow even amid the uproar. She looked at him without tears, only arctic disdain. "The truth is out. You're a pathetic, faithless worm. And this," she swept a hand to the splendor around, them to her gown, "was never for you. It was always for this." The humiliation was absolute. He stood exposed not only as a cheat, but as a fool, publicly cut to pieces by the woman he imagined he owned. His image empire was collapsing too. Dust before key clients, investors, peers. He was utterly, completely undone. In the chaos, as Gavin sputtered and guests drifted in stunned confusion, a figure rose from her seat, Valeria Knox. She moved with regal, unhurried calm, more frightening than any outburst. The crowd parted for her, a tide of black suits and pastels drawing back. Her heels struck the marble, each step a nail in Gavin's coffin. She never glanced at him. Her gaze stayed only on Lila. She climbed the altar steps as if they belonged to her. She stopped before Lila, who stood tall amid the wreckage, chest heaving not with grief, but with a fierce, heavy surge of righteous vengeance. The entire cathedral fell into a stunned, airless hush. What fresh madness was this? Valeria took Lila's hands in both of hers. The grip was warm, steady an anchor in the storm. She met Lila's eyes, and though soft, her voice carried the same impossible clarity. Lila's had. "Well," Valeria said, a small, proud smile touching her mouth. That was a rather dramatic way to call off a wedding. A nervous, bewildered titter rippled through the crowd. Valeria's smile deepened. She looked outward, then back to Lila. "It seems a waste to lose such a beautiful ceremony and such a captivating officiant." She cut a glance at the shell-shocked priest. "So, let's not." Turning fully to Lila, her expression shifted to breathtaking sincerity. The predator was gone. In her place stood a woman laying her heart bare before hundreds. "Lila Hart," Valeria said, her voice resonant with a power not of that sanctified space, yet holy in its own way. "You are the most brilliant, radiant, courageous woman I've ever known." This man, she didn't even flick a wrist toward Gavin, whose existence no longer merited notice, was a placeholder, a delay of game. "Marry me here. Now, let's finish what we began." Silence held. You could have heard a single gardenia petal fall. Lila looked at the woman before her, the ruthless CEO, the avenging angel, the improbable refuge. In her eyes, she saw truth and the promise of partnership, of a love not built on lies, but on choice. The remnants of fear burned away in the furnace of the moment. A slow, luminous smile unfurled, the first real, unforced smile she'd felt in months. It was liberation, triumph, and a future she had never dared to picture. "Yes," she said, voice clear and bright, threaded with joy. "Yes, Valeria Knox, I will marry you." The cathedral, which had been holding its breath, exploded cheers. Applause, disbelieving shouts, a frenzy of shudders. The priest, pale and dazed, glanced from furious, weeping Gavin to the two radiant women hand in hand. He fumbled with his book. I'm not sure the Dio," Valeria leveled him a look. That had made veteran VPs wilt. "Consider this a merger," she said, in a tone that broke no argument. "Proceed." And he did. The vows were not traditional. They were raw, fervent, entirely theirs. "I vow never to see you as anything less than the goddess you are," Valeria said, eyes bright with unshed tears. "To challenge your mind and cherish your heart. To be your fiercest shield and most devoted partner." "I vow not to let you hide behind your armor," Lila answered, tears of joy now streaming. "To bring light to your shadows, to be your equal in every boardroom and your refuge after every battle." When the priest, still in a haze, said, "You may now kiss," he didn't need to finish. Valeria framed Lila's face, her touch impossibly tender. Lila surged forward to meet her. Their first kiss was not a chaste peck for the cameras. It was passionate, deep, and unrestrained, a conflagration of all the pent-up tension, admiration, and desire that had built between them. It was a kiss. A victory of ownership, of a love born from the ashes of a lie. They poured every ounce of their being into it, forgetting the crowd, forgetting the world, lost in each other. The guests, as swept up in the unbelievable drama, roared their approval. They were no longer at a society wedding. They were witnesses to history, to a legend in the making. As they finally broke apart, breathless and laughing, foreheads resting, together the world came rushing back in a wave of sound and flashbulbs. They had done it. They had not just destroyed him. They had built something magnificent from the rubble. Part 8, Queen and CFO. The roar of the cathedral was a fading storm, swallowed by the soundproofed silence of Valeria's Rolls-Royce as it glided away from the curb. Inside, the world was reduced to the hum of the engine, the soft scent of leather, and the two of them. Lila sat, her monumental wedding gown billowing around her like the ghost of a life she just incinerated. She was trembling, not from fear, but from the aftershocks of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. Her heart was still hammering a wild, victorious rhythm against her ribs. She looked at her hands, still clutching the bouquet of gardenias, and let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. Valeria watched her, her own regal composure seeming to melt away in the privacy of the car. The predatory smile was gone, replaced by a look of awe and fierce possession. She reached over, her fingers, usually so sure and commanding, trembling, slightly as they brushed a stray tear from Lila's cheek. "You," Valeria breathed, her voice hushed with reverence, "were a goddess of vengeance and grace. I have never witnessed anything so perfect." Lila turned to look at her, the reality of what they had just done crashing over her. "And you were insane, were completely, utterly insane." A giddy, disbelieving laugh escaped her. "Did that really just happen?" "It did," Valeria said, a genuine, breathtaking smile gracing her features. It transformed her face, softening the severe angles, making her look younger, almost vulnerable, and the look on his face. "I will cherish that memory until the day I die." She leaned forward and tapped the privacy partition. Then a slight detour, swing by the office. Lila's eyebrows shot up. "The office, Valeria? I'm wearing a wedding dress. Our wedding dress? We just got married in a cathedral after publicly destroying a man. Don't you think we should? I don't know. Hide. For a few days." "Nonsense," Valeria said, her eyes gleaming with a new kind of fire. "The first move has been made. Now we secure the board. We are not hiding. We are claiming our victory." The car pulled into the underground garage of Vidian Industries. Valeria swept out, a queen returning. To her castle. Lila followed, the train of her dress whispering against the concrete floor, feeling like a surreal vision in the stark fluorescent light. Employees who were working late did double takes, their jaws dropping as the two women, one in a severe black suit and the other in a lavish wedding gown, marched through the silent, polished halls toward the executive elevator. They didn't stop until they reached Valeria's penthouse office suite. Instead of heading to her desk, Valeria led her to a discreet door Lila had never noticed. She placed her palm on a scanner. A lock disengaged with a soft thunk. This, Valeria said, pushing the door open, is home. Lila stepped through and her breath caught. Valeria's penthouse was not what she expected. It wasn't a cold, minimalist showcase of wealth. It was all warm, reclaimed wood, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking, dizzying view of the city and plush, deep-cushioned furniture and shades of charcoal and cream. A modern, minimalist fireplace flickered with real flames. It was a sanctuary of immense power and surprising warmth. The silence here was different from the car. It was deep, peaceful, and utterly isolating. The world's noise truly could not touch them here. Valeria turned to her, the city lights painting her in silhouette. "We have a deal," she stated, her business voice returning, though her eyes remained soft. "A 2-year merger, and a merger requires trust and a clear division of assets and responsibilities." She walked to her desk, picked up a single sheet of paper, and brought it back to Lila. It was a letter of appointment to the board of Vidian Industries. "Effective immediately, I am appointing Lila Knox, Nehart, to the position of Chief Financial Officer. She will have full signing authority and oversight of all financial operations, reporting directly to me." It was signed with Valeria's fierce, slashing signature. Lila stared at the paper, then at Valeria, utterly flawed. "CFO Valeria? I run a nonprofit, a large one. But this is Vidian. This is a multi-billion-dollar empire. You can't just appoint me. The board will never approve it. This is insane." Valeria finished for her, a smirk playing on her lips. "It seems to be our brand. The board will approve it because I own the controlling share, and because you are not just my wife. You are brilliant. You have a mind for strategy I've rarely seen. You noticed the nepotism in my VP that my entire analytics team missed. You are wasted on charity galas. I want that mind here with me." She stepped closer. "This isn't a gift. It's an investment in us." The sheer audacious trust behind the gesture stole Lila's breath. No prenup. And now the keys to the kingdom. It was more than a show of faith. It was a merging of their lives utterly and completely. A slow smile spread across Lila's face. She looked from the document to the woman who had just handed her empire as a wedding present. "So, this is what you really wanted," she teased, her voice dropping to a husky murmur. "You didn't just want me in your bed. You wanted me in your boardroom too." Valeria's smirk widened into a predatory, delighted grin. She closed the final distance between them, her hands coming up to cradle Lila's face, her thumbs stroking her jawline. "Maybe," she admitted, her voice a low, intimate thrum that vibrated through Lila's entire body. "I'm greedy. Maybe I want both." The last vestiges of restraint shattered. Lila surged forward and captured Valeria's lips in a searing kiss. It was nothing like the kiss at the altar that had been for an audience. This was raw, hungry, and desperately theirs. It was a conflagration of all the pent-up tension, the stolen glances, the whispered confessions, the shared fury. Valeria met her with equal hunger. Her cool composure incinerated in the heat. Her hand slid from Lila's face into her hair, dislodging pins, sending the pristine bridal hedo tumbling into a cascade of gold around her shoulders. The taste of her was intoxicating. Dark coffee, expensive whiskey, and pure unadulterated Valeria. They couldn't stop touching each other. The kiss deepened, becoming more frantic, more desperate. They stumbled backward, a tangled mess of silk, lace, and tailored wool until Lila's back met the cool glass of the panoramic window. The entire city sprawled beneath them, a galaxy of lights, witness to their private revolution. Valeria's lips trailed from Lila's mouth down her jaw to her neck, nipping and sucking at the sensitive skin there. Lila's head fell back with a gasp, her fingers clutching at Valeria's shoulders, scrambling to undo the buttons of her impeccably tailored jacket. "I want to see you," Lila breathed, her voice ragged. "All of you, no armor." It was like speaking a magic word. Valeria stilled for a moment, then pulled back, her eyes dark with desire and something else. Vulnerability. Slowly, she let Lila push the jacket from her shoulders. She stood there, allowing herself to be seen, to be undressed, both literally and metaphorically. They left a trail of clothing from the window to the hallway. Valeria's suit jacket, Lila's diamond earrings, the beaded belt of her gown. It was a frenzy of hands and lips, and whispered desperate, "Please." "Here," Valeria murmured, pressing Lila against the wall of the hallway, her knees sliding between the layers of Lila's wedding dress. "No, here," Lila gasped, pulling her down onto the deep, plush rug in front of the fireplace, its flames casting dancing shadows on their skin. They were everywhere at once, a whirlwind of discovery. Valeria, the feared CEO, was a surprisingly tender lover, her touches laced with a reverence that made Lila's heart ache. And Lila, the radiant angel, was full of a fiery passion that left Valeria breathless and begging for more. Yet, beneath the frantic passion, something tender and profound began to grow. In the quiet moments between kisses, as they caught their breath, Valeria would simply look at her, her gaze full of a wonder that was entirely new. She would trace the line of Lila's eyebrow, the curve of her lip, as if memorizing her, and Lila, in turn, saw past the icy CEO, the ruthless strategist. She saw the woman who had never done this before, who was navigating this new territory with a raw, unguarded honesty that was more intimate than any physical act. She saw the vulnerability Valeria hid under her armor, and it made her own heart swell with a protective, fierce love. They were no longer just allies in revenge. They were partners discovering the first breathtaking contours of a shared future, built not on a lie, but on the beautiful, chaotic, glorious rubble of the past. The queen had found her equal, and in doing so, had found a part of herself she never knew was missing. Part 9. The first night, the frenzy of their initial passion had ebbed, leaving in its wake a breathless, trembling quiet. They lay tangled on the rug before the fireplace, the only sounds their ragged breathing and the soft crackle of the flames. The trail of discarded clothing, the historic wedding gown, the powerful suit lay where they had fallen. Monuments to the personas they had shed. Valeria was propped on one elbow, her dark hair a messy cascade over her shoulder. Her usually impeccable makeup smudged. She looked unraveled. Her gaze traced the lines of Lila's body, illuminated in the flickering firelight, with a reverence that was entirely new. Her fingers, which could sign billion-dollar deals with a flick of the wrist, now trembled slightly as they brushed a stray strand of gold from Lila's forehead. "You are," Valeria began, her voice then stopped, shaking her head as if words were inadequate. "More than I ever imagined." Lila smiled, a slow, languid, deeply satisfied curve of her lips. She reached up and traced the strong line of Valeria's jaw, feeling the rapid pulse beating there. The Ice Queen was melting, and Lila was the sun. "You're not so bad yourself," she teased softly, her voice husky for a ruthless soul seller. Valeria's answering smile was small, genuine, and breathtakingly vulnerable. She captured Lila's hand and brought it to her lips, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her palm. The gesture was so tender it made Lila's heart clench. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the silence speaking volumes. The adrenaline of the day, the revenge, the spectacle, the frantic coupling was fading, leaving behind something deeper, more terrifying, and more real. This was no longer about the plan. This was the uncharted territory. After the map ended, Lila shifted, rolling onto her side to face Valeria fully. The firelight danced over Valeria's skin, highlighting the elegant strength of her shoulders, the surprising softness of her stomach. She saw a small faint scar on her rib cage, a vulnerability she never would have guessed at. She reached out and gently touched it. "How?" she asked softly. Valeria's eyes flickered down, sailing accident. When I was 15, the boom swung around. She said it dismissively, but she didn't pull away from Lila's touch. Instead, she seemed to lean into it. Tell me, Lila whispered. Tell me something real. Something no one else knows. Valeria was silent for so long, Lila thought she wouldn't answer. She watched the play of emotions across that usually guarded face. Hesitation, fear, and then a slow, dawning resolve. I'm terrified of deep water, Valeria finally admitted, the words seeming ripped from her. Since that day, I have a panic. Attack if I can't see the bottom. I tell people I don't swim because it's inefficient. It's a lie. She let out a shaky breath, as if confessing a mortal sin. It's the only thing that truly frightens me. The admission was a gift more precious than the CFO title. It was a key to the innermost chamber. This woman, who faced down corporate titans without blinking, was entrusting her with a fundamental weakness. Lila's eyes welled with tears. She understood the magnitude of the trust being placed in her. In answer, she leaned forward and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to the scar. Your secret is safe with me? The air in the room shifted again. The playful heat was banked, replaced by a profound, aching tenderness. Valeria's eyes shimmered in the firelight, and she blinked rapidly, looking away as if embarrassed by the show of emotion. Seeing her vulnerability, Lila felt a surge of protective love so fierce it stole her breath. She wanted to banish every shadow to prove that this fortress of a woman could be safe here with her. She pushed herself up, then stood, holding out her hand. Valeria looked at it, then up at her face, a question in her eyes. Come with me, Lila said, her voice firm yet gentle. She led Valeria from the warmth of the fireplace through the silent, dark penthouse to the master bedroom. It was like the living area, a steady and powerful elegance and surprising warmth. A vast bed dominated the room, made up with impossibly high thread count linens in a pale gray. Lila stopped at the foot of the bed and turned to face Valeria. She took both of Valeria's hands in her own, linking their fingers. The city lights from the window behind her cast a halo around her blonde hair. She looked like an avenging angel come to offer benediction. The frenzy was incredible, Lila said, her voice low and steady, but that was for us then. For the adrenaline, for the victory. She squeezed Valeria's hands. I don't want to take you against a wall or on a rock tonight, Valeria. She stepped closer until their bodies were almost touching. She brought one hand up to Caparo's cheek, her thumb stroking the high arch of her cheekbone. I want you in your bed, she whispered, her voice full of a raw, aching sincerity. I want to see you in the moonlight. I want to learn you. All of you, the CEO, the strategist, the terrified 15-year-old girl, I want to worship every part. She leaned in, her lips a breath away from Valeria's. So she murmured, the words a soft promise against Valeria's mouth. Take me to bed, Valeria. Not because you're my wife. Not for revenge. I want you. Just you. It was the final key. The last of Valeria's defenses crumbled. A single perfect tear escaped the corner of her eye and traced a path down her face. Lila caught it with her thumb. With a shuddering breath, Valeria surrendered. She nodded, her own hands coming up to frame Lila's face. Yes, was all she could manage, her voice thick with emotion. The rest of the night unfolded not as a conquest, but as a discovery, a sacred, slow unraveling. There was no more hurry. They explored each other with a reverent curiosity, as if mapping uncharted holy ground. Every touch was a question and an answer. Every sigh was a confession. Lila discovered that the ruthless CEO melted into a puddle of sensation at the lightest brush of lips against the inside of her wrist. Valeria learned that a trail of kisses down the elegant column of Lila's spine could make her gasp and arch her back like a bow. They spoke in hushed whispers. Here, yes, oh yes, right there. You're so beautiful. So are you. I've never felt like this. Valeria, the novice, was a surprisingly quick and attentive study. Her natural intensity and focus channeled into learning. Lila's body memorizing what made her sigh, what made her cry out. And Lila, the heartbroken, found herself not just desired, but cherished, adored, treated as a priceless, fragile miracle. When they finally joined, it was with a slowness that was agonizing and exquisite. They looked into each other's eyes, and there was no hiding, no armor left. It was not just their bodies connecting. It was their very souls intertwining. It was softness and fire, reverence and a desperate, hungry need, all woven together into something entirely new. Afterward, they lay spent and trembling in each other's arms, limbs tangled, skin slick with sweat. The first rays of dawn were beginning to tinge the skyline outside the window soft peach. Valeria lay with her head on Lila's chest, listening to the steady, strong beat of her heart. Her body was relaxed in a way it had never been. All the usual tension drained away. She felt peace. Lila stroked her hair, her fingers carding through the dark silk. She felt a sense of rightness, of home so profound it brought a fresh wave of quiet tears to her eyes. This was not the love she had thought she'd have. It was wilder, more dangerous, more intelligent, and more real than anything she could have dreamed. They made love again as the sun rose, this time with a sleepy knowing tenderness, a quiet reaffirmation of the bond forged in the night, as they finally drifted into a sated sleep wrapped around each other. The last thought in Valeria's mind was a quiet, staggering revelation. This had started as revenge. It had become a business arrangement. But now, lying in the arms of the woman she had married to destroy a rival, she knew with absolute certainty that it was neither of those things. It was love. A love she had never expected, never allowed herself to want, and one she would now move heaven and earth to keep. Part 10, From Revenge to Love. The world outside their penthouse sanctuary erupted into a frenzy. The wedding day massacre was the story of the decade, splashed across every tabloid, business journal, and news channel. Pundits dissected the Knox heart, Merger analyzing it as the most brilliant corporate and public relations coup in recent history. Gavin Mercer became a pariah, his company crumbling under the weight of the scandal and Valeria's expertly executed financial attacks. He was a ghost, a cautionary tale. But inside the world of Wormwood and panoramic views, a different story was unfolding. The 2-year contract, once the foundation of their entire arrangement, began to feel like a meaningless formality, a relic from a past life. It was never mentioned, never discussed. It simply gathered dust in a safe, as irrelevant as the wedding. Photos that didn't exist. Their life together built itself not on the rubble of revenge, but on a new solid ground of shared deniedness. Mornings were no longer a solitary, efficient affair for Valeria. They began with the rich, dark aroma of her coffee and the lighter floral scent of Lila's tea steeping in the kitchen. They read the news together at the breakfast bar, Lila's feet tucked under her on the stool, Valeria's tablet propped beside her plate. They would point out articles to each other, not just about business, but about art exhibits, political scandals, a new restaurant. Look, Lila would say, nudging Valeria's arm. The Times did a feature on us. They're calling you a ruthless romantic. Valeria would glance at the headline and snort. Romantic? I was pragmatic. You proposed on an altar? Lila would sing songs, sipping her tea with flowers. That's textbook romance. My ruthless wife. Valeria would just shake her head, but a faint pleased blush would touch her cheeks. The drive to Vidian was a shared ritual. They'd ride down in the silent elevator, a united front, and step into the lobby together. The employees who had once only known fear in Valeria's presence now saw a new dynamic. They saw the way the CEO's hand would rest just for a moment on the small of the CFO's back as they entered the executive elevator. They saw the way Lila could calm Valeria's infamous temper with a single quiet word. In the boardroom, they were a devastating team. Valeria was the broadsword, cutting through opposition with brutal logic and unwavering demand. Lila was the scalpel, precise and insightful, able to find the floor in an argument or the opportunity in a setback that others missed. She had a way with people that Valeria never had, soothing bruised egos and building alliances with the genuine, warmth that made them fiercely loyal. Together, they were unstoppable. Vidian's profits soared to unprecedented heights. But the real transformation happened after hours. They argued over silly domestic things with the same passion they brought to merger negotiations. The coffee in the break room is swill, Valeria. We're a billion-dollar company. We can afford ethically sourced artisanal beans. It's caffeine, Lila. Its purpose is efficiency, not a flavor profile. This isn't your nonprofit yoga studio. It's about morale, and it tastes like burnt tires. I'm ordering a tasting session with 3 new vendors, and you will participate. Valeria would grumble, but she always did, and she always secretly preferred the blend Lila chose. They teased each other endlessly. Valeria would leave a single perfect gardenia on Lila's keyboard with a note that read, "From my angel from your soul seller." Lila would reprogram Valeria's smart speaker to play nothing but bubbly pop music for an entire morning just to see the look of utter horror on her face. They learned each other's secret languages. Valeria would come home after a particularly grueling day, her shoulders tight with tension. And without a word, Lila would wordlessly lead her to the sofa, pour 2 fingers of whiskey, and simply sip. With her in silence, her head resting on Valeria's shoulder until the knot in her jaw unclenched. And Lila, on the rare occasion a shadow of her past betrayal would cross her mind, would grow quiet, Valeria would notice instantly. She wouldn't press, wouldn't demand. She would simply find her, take her hand, and lead her to the piano in the corner of the living room, an instrument Lila had confessed she missed playing. She'd sit and listen as Lila played, her eyes closed, the music washing away the old hurt, replaced by the solid, certain presence of the woman who loved her now. The nights were their sanctuary. The frantic, hungry passion of their first weeks settled into a deep, knowing intimacy. It was just as fierce, but now laced with the tenderness that could bring Valeria to tears. She, who had never allowed herself to be vulnerable, would sometimes simply hold Lila in the darkness, her face buried in her hair, breathing her in as if she were the very air. "You have bewitched me," she whispered one night, her voice raw with emotion. "I don't recognize myself. I find myself happy for no reason at all. I'll be in a meeting and I'll think of something you said and I have to stop myself from smiling." Lila turned in her arms, her face soft in the moonlight. "I like this version of you, the one who smiles for no reason." "I am yours," Valeria stated, as if it were the most fundamental truth in the universe. And it was the 2-year mark of their marriage came and went without ceremony. It was a Tuesday. They had a late night at the office, finalizing acquisition. They ordered takeout sushi and ate it at Valeria's desk, their chairs pulled close together, debating the final clauses of the contract. It was only as they were getting ready for bed, the city lights twinkling below them, that Valeria paused, her hairbrush in hand. She looked at their reflection in the bathroom mirror, Lila in her silk chemise, herself in a tailored pajama set, a match to set, a life built together. "It was 2 years ago today," Valeria said softly. Lila met her eyes in the mirror, a slow, understanding smile spreading across her face. "So it was." She turned and leaned against the vanity. "Should we break out the contract, discuss the amicable dissolution?" Valeria put the brush down and turned to face her. She took both of Lila's hands in hers, her expression more serious than it had been during the multi-billion-dollar negotiation just hours before. "I promised you 2 years," Valeria said, her voice low and filled with reverence. That still made Lila's heart skip a beat. A business arrangement, an escape. She brought Lila's hands to her lips, kissing each knuckle. "It was the worst deal I have ever made in my life." Lila's smile softened. "Oh, why is that?" "Because I severely undervalued the asset I was acquiring," Valeria murmured, her eyes shining. "I thought I was getting a strategic partner and a satisfying revenge. I had no idea I was getting my heart, my home." She leaned forward, resting her forehead against Lila's. 2 years was a sentence, a limitation. She took a deep, steadying breath. "I think forever might suit us better." Tears of pure, unadulterated joy welled in Lila's eyes. This was the woman who dealt uncertainties in data and cold, hard facts. And she was choosing forever, not because of a contract, but because of love. Lila cupped her wife's face, her thumb stroking those beloved sharp cheekbones. Forever, she whispered, the word of vow more sacred than any they had spoken in the cathedral. Forever sounds perfect. They sealed the new deal, not with a signature, but with a kiss that tasted of love, of sushi, of shared history, and of a future brighter than any city light. Later, curled together in the center of their vast bed, limbs intertwined, Valeria drowsily nuzzled into Lila's neck. "I suppose we should actually have a proper wedding photo taken," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "For the office. It's good for morale." Lila laughed a light, happy sound that echoed in the quiet room. She pulled her closer. "Whatever you say, my ruthless romantic." And as they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in the peace they had built together, the last remaining shred of the vengeful pact dissolved, replaced by the quiet, unshakable certainty of a love that had, against all odds, become the most real thing either of them had ever known.